Heyo. Oh, you're really relaxed there. The camera caught you off guard. We're coming
I was
home.
just taking a nap, Marcus. It's Friday afternoon here.
Home is a place where you can relax, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Friday afternoon in Switzerland. I always get that wrong. Yeah. There you go. I'm here in
Hi.
Orlando.
Good to see you.
It's good to be seen. Good to see you as well. Yeah. Um, how you feeling this week, Mark?
Very well, actually. Yeah,
Mm,
very
mm.
well. And I'm looking forward to the weekend. And again, closing off this week with the meaningful conversation.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah. I appreciate these conversations. We've had millions of conversations. You literally make me a better person. Those are the type of people you need in your life.
Oh, thank
As
you.
I'm striving to be a better person, I hope it's iron sharpening iron. We've shared it back and forth. I mean, this is not said for the podcast, but because this is public, you do make me a better person. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. Well, it definitely is iron sharpening iron. It's
Yeah.
goes very much both ways, Marcus. And that's the nature of this beautiful collaboration.
A
Yeah.
co-laboring.
Yeah.
Um, boom. Let's jump into it. Let's get it. So we're on chapter 11, the ripple effect. In this chapter, our three friends, Kenna, was
Rosie,
it
Alex.
Rosie and Alex, thank you. They they're reflecting on some different salon sessions. They're underneath the acorn tree or the oak tree where they sit outside of campus, and they're getting the reviews of it. They're seeing how the faculty's receiving it, how the student body's receiving it, how the administrators are receiving it, and they're having dialogue about what these salons are actually doing on campus and within the community.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, we're going to look at some rising resistance at an institutional level, resistance within themselves, and our idea, our topic is, what do you do when your authentic expression is misunderstood? Yeah.
Yeah.
Your
And I think
thoughts?
it's important to say that, the ripple effect, they're actually seeing a lot of positive response, right? So,
Hmm.
since they came out and introduced themselves authentically, now they're looking back on a bunch of other salons that have happened, and they're realizing that it's really speaking to the students. More and more students are showing up. They're having meaningful conversations. They're able to hold a space where different perspectives, opinions can be shared in a constructive way, in a way that can help really move the dialogue forward. So this moment under the tree is really I feel in general a moment of celebration, right? A moment of it's actually working. What we've set out to do, it's starting to work.
Yeah.
And given social media is such one of the benefits of it is that you get pretty instant feedback, right? So they're going through some of the comments and realizing a lot of it is sort of very positive in nature. But there's
Mm,
also once in a while the comment about, this doesn't belong here, right?
mm,
This is doesn't belong in an institution um, like this one, right? A highly credible and a highly respected institution. This is more work that should be done outside, right, on your own time. And
mm.
and so they're just sort of noticing that there is a little bit of pushback as well, and whether it's because they're being misunderstood, or is the pushback coming from the fact that there's a bit of a challenge to the status quo that is being felt. I think they don't know that yet, but it's sort of an interesting moment in the book, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's called coming home to who you are. In education reenlightened. I like to think of it as human development. That's what you and I always connect on. That's what being at full potential is all about. And that pushback comes when we start to form into a new identity. We're going to touch on this inside this episode, but
Mhm.
whenever you're coming into a new identity on the outside in our environment, when we're in an institute and you've spoken about businesses where you
Mhm.
served, um, and I was talking about on the inside when you're coming into a new identity, there is that friction, there is that rub.
Mhm.
But how do you sit with that misunderstanding? And that misunderstanding is not the problem, but it's the trust there, the respect, and the understanding of, okay, what's going to come of this.
Mhm.
One last point before we go on to the quote. You talked about feedback, and that's what this. How do we deal with feedback, right? In deliberate practice for development, you need feedback. Ideally, you need it from a trusted source, and you also need it understanding the result or the goal that you're moving towards. Did I freeze on your side?
You're back. You're back.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so when we talk about the immediate feedback of social media, I was just like, is that a trusted source? Um, like action, does that mean traction towards what I want?
Yeah.
You don't need traction from everybody. You just need traction from the people that are in alignment with where you're going.
Yeah.
So yeah. What's up?
Do you have an example in your own life, Marcus, where the authentic self didn't feel understood at first?
Yeah. I mean, this is life, right? um let me see. You know, oh man, I did not share this with you, and it's few and far in between when I do share this. But there was a time when we would do work inside the community. I thought, now, not that this is traumatic, but this was a stressful point that I never really thought about until I sometimes reflect on this. I've processed it, so
Mhm.
it's a scar, not a wound. But we would actually go out into the community, knocking on doors and inviting people to meet them in their needs where they are,
Mhm.
and again, never to be intrusive, but rather just like, hey, we're going out into the community to help people, literally help people.
Mhm.
And I remember more than once in this happened, but I remember this guy brandish a pistol because this was in the South,
Mhm.
and I was just like, hey, sir, like, I, he's like, what are you doing here? And I said, sir, I have nothing but love and peace to bring you. Like, and he said, I don't give what the you have to give me. You get your ass off my porch. And I was just like, understood. And that's the thing. I had to understand it.
Mm.
I get it. And again, we were talking about this operating from a place of fear.
Mm.
Um, he saw this kid on his porch in the South, holds a different context, didn't know why or what, you know. Um, in another day and age, probably could have gone a whole different way.
Mm.
Um, and I think, quite honestly, having processed that and having alchemized that, that is how and why I do show up in the spaces I do. Like, there really is no threat
Mm.
in the way we operate inside the economically developed world. And I do understand. I've been in spaces where there is literal physical threat. And it's just like, move with the right spirit. I can tell you instances in Saudi or instances in South Korea where it's just like, oh, this person thinks something else.
Mhm.
Know who you are from the inside out, and communicate that, and let the other
Yeah.
person know, hey, you're safe. I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a long
No,
roundabout
thanks
way.
for
Yeah,
sharing
no,
that,
no.
Marcus.
Thank you for
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah. It's very impromptu, and I can sense that it was, obviously a very, um, yeah, challenging moment, and to be able to, to be, like you said, in that state of curiosity, and remain sort of open without judgment in that type of setting is,
Mm.
that's amazing.
Yeah. It's and it has made all the difference. It's quite all right. It's quite all right.
Yeah.
I'll read the quote that we have here, and then I'd love to, for your take on it. Right.
Yep.
So the friends are underneath the tree, and it says, the same doubts about whether these type of conversations belong at a technical university. And then Alex interjects. He says, "But that's exactly why it's needed to be here." Alex countered firmly. "Where else are we going to learn about how to think beyond equations and formulas?" The question I have for you, Mark, is what is the purpose of education? Um, and I think this is at the heart of the book, too. They're at a technical institute, and a lot of the thinking can be done, but then are they actually learning how to be human? And that's what the humanities are. And that's what I don't want to lead the question. But does this belong at a technical institute? Does your work, being at full potential, belong in places that serve technical spaces?
Oh,
Has
yeah,
to you
yeah.
with several questions. So however you want to respond.
I do think so. Yes, I do think so, and I think it's not just in the humanities. I think it's across all disciplines because I believe that this work is key to our ability to think critically, and to be
Okay.
able to look at things through a lens that is our lens, right? And critical thinking, there's not a standard that is being set like this is what critical thinking is. Critical thinking is our ability to know what's true for us, to have clarity on our values, to have clarity on our own ideas, perspectives, intuitions, and to be able to then look at what's happening around us, look at what we're being taught, look at what the world is bringing to us through that lens,
Mm-hmm.
and to evaluate that, right? To have our voice in response to that. And I think that that is really, for me, what the essence of critical thinking is.
Mm-hmm.
And clearly, higher education or education in general is there to help us become better critical thinkers or thinkers in
Mm-hmm.
general. And I do believe it starts with knowing ourselves, right? Knowing who we are, what's important to us. Um, so for me, it's critical. It's
Yeah.
definitely very critical. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't mean that all the technical skills that are also very critical get pushed aside, right? It's an integration of them. And I feel like we still live a bit in a world where it's either or, right? Either
Mm-hmm.
we do this work on ourselves or we go to school and we learn things, we acquire knowledge. But I do feel this new paradigm of integration and being able to look at what we've always believed to be true, what we've always been taught through a lens of does this still hold true today? Earlier in the book, there's that chapter where Professor Omar is talking about macroeconomics and supply and demand and some of these concepts that have worked really well in the past, and he starts to open up dialogue around, do these same assumptions still hold true today, right? And if so,
Mm-hmm.
why? And if not, why not? And it
Mm-hmm.
does require profit maximization, all these things. Does it still hold true? And it does require students to be able to go inside and get that inner clarity of where are we today, right? And what is
Mm-hmm.
important? And how am I seeing the world evolve and change? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it belongs, but I do think that it also can feel like a threat, um, at least in the beginning.
When you say it feels like it can feel like, what is the it?
Well, the critical thinking, the inside out
Mm.
thinking, really, um, doing the work with students for them to know themselves better.
Yeah.
Because critical thinking means also you're going to be critical of some of the things that may be outdated, right? Or that may need to be relooked at through fresh lenses. And if your institution is based on tradition and holding things the way they've always been, because it's been serving really well, then anything that is critical to that can feel like a threat.
Mhm.
And I think that in this chapter, we're starting to get a glimpse of that, right? We're starting to feel there's a bit of tension that is starting to build up.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, tension. This is my philosophy. Tension is actually, it's necessary. That's what intention means. It means a place of empowerment. You are intending. You're putting tension into the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. You, one thing I want us to keep in mind as we discuss this book is we keep on talking about kids knowing themselves and their value systems. This is the age where they're forming it. So, understandably, they don't know themselves yet.
Yeah.
In my own lived experience, because of the context in which I grew up, there was an intentional implanting at a young age that I think has helped me. And we can get into that later on. But I think even my name, Marcus Aurelius, like I came into his work very at a very young age because he was like, this guy's named after me, or I'm named after him. And the reason I say that is because when I used to work inside the class, it's just like, oh yeah, you don't know who you are yet. And I had to have that space of grace. You don't know
You
what
know,
values you hold because what's
yeah.
important to you, you don't know what's important to you because you're entering into this world. What's up? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about, for me always, that actually as a child, you're super clear about who you are and what you like, what you don't like. Children are like the best at deciding where they're going to put their energy, where they're not going to put their energy,
Yeah.
because it's so innate.
Yeah.
So there's part of me that agrees with you and says, no,
Mm-hmm.
it takes time and it's part of the adult development process to be able to clearly articulate, what your values are, what's important to you. And then on the other hand, it's like, no, it's already there from like day one, and it's so visible from the beginning. We often hear that if you look really at a child
Mm-hmm.
and how they're showing up and what they're being drawn to, it can already basically give a lot of clues and a lot of insight about where their gifts are, right? And where their potential is and how they're going to be able to maximize and realize their potential in life. But it sort of gets shut down, can,
Mm-hmm.
through the growing up process. And maybe that's important too, right? That and then at some age, there's a desire to know again. And what I think is unfortunate is that desire to know often leads people to go and read tons of books and to go and seek the answers of who am I outside, right? Somebody is going to
Mm.
tell me and help me figure it out. Whereas actually, it really is about reconnecting with ourselves and
Hey.
paying attention to what is already within us. Um, so yeah, I have a
I totally agree with all of that. And actually, you just explained The Alchemist. You actually explained this book. It was already there from the beginning. There was conflict, the rising tension, and disruption, and then it's returning back, almost as if you're coming home to who you are. Eh?
it kind of, yeah. Huh.
um,
Unbelievable. Yeah.
the Jesuits would say, "Give
Somebody
me a
should write a
book."
book about that, Marcus.
Maybe, yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, you're absolutely right. It We're born whole, and that's the thing about adolescence, though. Adolescence is you think you know everything, and then it's wildly disrupted And that's one definition, and I don't like the word, but the word crazy. It's
Mm,
when your lived experience does not match your expectations don't match your experience. And you're like, I
mm,
thought the world was like this, but what is this? Now here's the
mm,
thing, Mark. There I think critiquing and you stress. Like there's healthy stress. That's how development happens. That's not the problem. The problem is what do we think after the stress?
say more
How
about
do
that.
we um so in communication we say there's conflict in every relationship. Conflict doesn't define the relationship, rather how we deal with it. First of all, when I assume good intention from you and I assume you have your best, you have my best in mind. This is why we get feedback from trusted sources. I allow you to speak into my life and I receive it as just a perspective. And it's not a full perspective. So you can tell me stuff and I'm like, okay, yeah. And Mark is hearing it from a limited perspective. And then I also have agency of what am I going to do with this information? How's it going to serve me? And how am I
Mm,
going to do away with it?
mm, yeah,
So it's how do you think about feedback? What do
yeah,
you do with feedback? And if you learn that skill,
yeah,
regardless of what they say on YouTube comments, regardless of what is done when a person doesn't call you back for 15 days,
yeah,
you understand maybe he has a problem with his family or maybe he's going through stuff, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And you start to have more agency.
yeah,
And that's when you start to dance with the world.
yeah.
What's up?
No, I think it's really a good point around feedback. What feedback do you take on? What do you do with the feedback when you do take it on? When is it not? When should you not take on the feedback, right? And just keep moving forward. And I think having that discernment also has a lot to do with knowing ourselves, right? And knowing
Yeah.
why we're doing what we're doing, accepting that not everyone is going to understand it and be okay with that. Um, but then there's also those situations, and I was telling you that just before we started today, is when you don't get feedback. And maybe I can just share this again,
Yeah, go for
very
it.
briefly, right? When
Oh
we
yeah.
started with the being at full potential work and we started to do work in organizations, we would have champions within companies that would say, I love this, let's do this within our team. And so we would, do an intervention, a workshop, and most often it would be very well received within that group. And there would be some, dynamic and energy that would be built up there. And it would start to travel within the company, right? Because they would talk to their colleagues and they would say, yeah, we did this workshop, it's about this and that. And then eventually, as sort of the the coaches serving these organizations, we thought it would lead to more projects. But then one day, all of a sudden, the conversation shut down. It's like the door closed without
Mm,
any feedback, without any sense of like, oh, Mark, um, we're gonna put this on pause for 6 months because we're busy with other stuff, but let's pick it up again at some other time. Or, we're not quite ready for this yet, but let's maybe look at it again, you know, some later time, whatever. But like no communication at all, no feedback at all. And that, despite getting, this real sense of having had a great experience with these people.
mm,
Um, And so the only thing I can do to make sense of it in my own mind is hypothesize, right? Is to come up with a narrative, a storyline. And that
mhm,
storyline, usually the conclusion I come to is that it 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 reaches a certain level within the organization. Let's say, higher management finds out about this project and goes like, no, no, this doesn't belong here. Um, we don't want to be doing this type of work. We don't want our people to start challenging the status quo and asking, difficult questions because they have work to do. We want them to be focused on getting things done. So, no more of this, right?
mhm.
Stop it, shut it down. And of course, that's a very difficult message to communicate to somebody that you've built a relationship with. So it's easier just to not say anything. And
Is it?
well, not for me, it wouldn't be, but I can
Yeah.
imagine that for some people, it might be an easier way to do with it, right? Just to push it aside. And so this is, and I'm not saying that any of this is true, right? But it's the way that I make sense of it. It's the way that I story the no feedback situations. This is the way I
Mm,
make sense of it. It helps me to be able to move forward and to say, that's okay, right? It takes time, and it takes readiness. And if this organization is not ready, then just move on. It might be something completely different. It might be that it actually I thought it was a very successful intervention, but actually they are like, no, didn't really do anything for us.
yeah.
So that could also be the case. Um, but I think feedback. There's the feedback you get, and then there's the feedback you don't get. But clearly, there's communication also in not saying anything, right? In a door closing, there's communication in that as well. It's just more difficult to decipher it.
In in communication, one of the axioms is you cannot not communicate. It's a double
Yeah,
negative, which means
yeah,
you're always communicating.
yeah,
That said, when a person takes inaction, what message are you telling yourself about that?
yeah,
That's one voice we always have to be mindful of. What meaning am I giving this moment?
yeah.
And I think one thing that can save or an organization, a person, is while knowing yourself, yeah, but also knowing what you want to create. And this comes back to the empowerment dynamic with David Emerald. He recently just passed. I don't know if you know, but just when you know what you want, I told you this, you invite collaborators. And that business, that organization just didn't, they weren't ready to go on the journey with you. And that's when you say, that's okay, with or without you. And it's not a with or without you, like pushing away like that. It's just like, I know
Yeah,
where I'm going.
yeah,
And if you want to come with me, let's go. And if not,
yeah,
I honor that. I have to honor that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and this is setting up really beautifully for the next couple chapters, right? When you think of how
Mm,
Amar is taking the pushback, in chapter 12, 13, it's very different than how the students are taking the pushback, right? There's energetically, there's a difference. And I think it's pointing to what you were just saying, you know? So,
mm, yeah. I want to end with this little bit of etymology that I looked up while looking at this chapter.
mhm,
It's the word problem, project, and purpose.
mhm,
That pro right in the front of it means in front of. Um, a problem, blem means, and this is actually the etymology of it, but you could look it up. But it means something that's dropped in front of you. And I think of it as a problem. If that's in front of you, then there's a project. What do you want to throw forward? Like eject, eject, subject, reject. And that's why projects move us
mm,
forward. And then there is purpose. It's actually purpose, but that pro again comes from what do you place in front of you? What is your focus?
mm,
Whenever we're dealing with anxiety, there are problems all around. And I've mentioned this before. The purpose is you're going to focus on one problem.
mm,
Right now, our problem is that you and I are focusing on in collaboration is human development. The problem being, how do we bring people's awareness to what their potential is so that they can be at full potential?
mm,
They can express that. And because we know what the problem is and we have purpose in that, we have projects in regards to that. And that's why we can smile in the storm, or we can, okay, all of these problems are happening, but it's no, we keep going forward with, again, power, love, and wisdom. But yeah.
amazing, Marcus. Yeah. Yeah. The breaking down of words, it's going to the root, I think can be super insightful to do that.
Our words create our world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all vibrations, just the arrangement of vibrations.
Yeah.
Well,
Wow. Well, we're at our half an hour, aren't we? Just flew by.
we touched on many different things today. Um, yeah, we're at our half hour mark.
Yeah.
Next week, the administrations confront, um, yeah, the deeper truths about their purpose and their work and
Yeah.
their own future.
Yeah.
There are a lot of
Yeah.
conversations about post-secondary education's purpose and its role, jobs to be done, and that's going to be disrupted. I boldly say that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Yep. And it's wonderful to be um, writing this new story together, right? Because I think any
Mm,
change starts with being able to craft a new narrative, to be able to articulate it, to be able to tell a new story. And I think, that's what we're trying to do with this book. It's right what we're trying to do with these 23 conversations is really put into the world a new vision, a new narrative, a new
mm,
story for higher education. Um, yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing is that we now have a landing page, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So if anybody listening in would like to go and listen to the previous chapters, that's now all available. And the website is beingatfullpotential.com/coming home. Beingatfullpotential.com/coming home. And there you will find all 11 chapters, I think, now that we have done a podcast on. And you will also be able to sign up if you want to get the ebook. And that's for free. So it's the official launch of the book is coming in September, but you can already receive the ebook if you like. So all of that on beingatfullpotential.com/coming home.
Yes. We're gonna get a perfect slide for that next time. Follow along for the journey. We are learning as we go along as well. uh, thank you, Mark, once again for this wonderful conversation.
My
And
pleasure.
yeah,
Thank you,
thank.
Marcus.
I was gonna say thank you for being a mental home in Zurich, where you are, and connecting in this space. Yeah.
See you next week.
See you next week.